It's right here.
Good morning, everybody. All right. Hey, thank you guys for being here. Welcome to 1 Million Cups for Global Entrepreneurship Week. We're really excited to have you guys here both in person, and welcome to everyone listening to us on YouTube. Is there anyone here that's new to 1 Million Cups? I mean, there may be a few on YouTube. So I just wanted to kind of give you a quick are all about is creating community for our entrepreneurs. And we practice presentations, not pitches, and we practice connection, not networking. And so we really want to create that positive community for everyone, from our presenters to our audience. The way this is going to work is we have 2 presenters today. They're awesome. They both have a global perspective. And we are going to have Ainul Habib. He's going to present and qualify first. They'll have a 6 to 8 minute presentation and then a 20-minute Q&A from the audience. His job is to give you enough information, just enough information about his business and his business model so that you can grasp what he's doing and then offer suggestions, resources, questions about things that were unclear to you. It's basically, Malachi used to say, we're a dolphin tank, not a shark tank. So we're just trying to create community for him, create connections. After that, then Lee Easton with Aerovision is going to come up and we'll present, the same situation. So any questions so far? All right. We have a thought leader for Ainul. Alex, Columbia's Galloway Group, his name. Alex G is in the house. We're so excited to have him back. He's been in Minnesota for 2 years. I'm going to let him say a little bit about what he does and why he's the thought leader for Ainul. But I did want to say, he was one of the original, he was the second group of organizers for 1 Million Cups when we started really deep roots with 1 Million Cups. So we're really excited to have him here today. Alex, go ahead and tell us what you're all about, and then I will take it away.
Very good. So Alex, it is a pleasure to be back at 1 Million Cups. I love this place, this location. It's done a lot of good for me. My background, in 20 seconds or so, I had 2 backgrounds. Both of those were that one got acquired after about 8 months, which moved me up to Minneapolis. I was up there for 2 years running the acquiring company, and it was a turnaround job. That was a sad experience, but sold that company to our number one customer. Now with ReadyCheck. ReadyCheck is some of you guys may know Chase Curtis. Chase Curtis has Sway Medical. He's launching another product line, and I'm running a product line. I'm very excited to hear the pitch. Very excited to be back here. Thanks all.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ainul. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you, and really appreciate your time. I'm here in Tulsa by way of a new resident as of April. I wanted to just tell you a little bit about kind of my journey to that light bulb moment before I shared a little bit about my background, and then we'll get into the solution from there. So when I describe this to friends, they often hit me back with American Idol for software sales. So basically, people trying to break into the industry, or they're already in the industry trying to prove themselves to a panel of experts, which builds an expert-screened hiring marketplace. And while I was kind of studying the landscape of software sales tools and software sales hiring platforms throughout my own career, I realized that I didn't go out of I wasn't excited about like spending Friday or Saturday, in a hiring platform. But I did spend a lot of my time working on my craft, getting ahead of things. And I found that it was a lot more like a cyclical tournament. And so I realized that a lot of the leaders in the world are actually these cyclical competitions. The Olympics does a pretty good job of recruiting athletes. Oscars do a pretty good job of recruiting thespians, and so on and so forth. And I started to dig a little bit deeper, and I realized the biggest difference is that these cyclical competitions have public leaderboards with fixed awards, And what this does is it creates an aura around the winners, which results in kind of continuous user acquisition. And what that does is it creates a pressure to build better and better screening internally so that the value of that credential doesn't get diluted. And so I think that's critical, and I think it's a critical differentiation for a software hiring marketplace in the future. So I also am somewhat of a student of human nature and have studied this effect on myself. This is the top 10 leaderboard at my first sales job in 2012. We had, it's common in sales to basically blast your salary on a wall. And it has this transformative effect of getting you to do your job. This served as kind of an aspirational aristocracy for the people around it as well. I worked at a team that grew from 50 to 300 people over a couple of years. And this, whoever was on the leaderboard was often very inspiring for those people. So a little bit about why I'm crazy about this particular space is I'm a programmer turned salesperson turned founder. So I grew up building websites, and then I taught myself back-end development and frameworks that I needed to build what I needed to build. And then I worked at big companies like Citrix and startups, and I was lucky enough to leave an impression on my last startup and have those founders invest in me now. And so I wanted to share a little bit about my background and how it's informed strong opinions about the future of hiring and a lot of the rules for Zen qualifying. So earlier I mentioned I worked at Citrix, and I actually I went from a sales development intern, who are someone that kind of opens conversations, to being promoted 4 times and becoming the #1 salesperson within a year. And I want to credit that to all of the resources I had around me. It was really, really easy for me to get 100 calls that had worked before and go home and listen to those. It was really easy for me to jump onto a call that someone was already having. It was basically like the ideal learning environment for sales. And I actually think of it more like college than my first job. So after that, I decided to move to New York and work for a company with less than $100,000 in revenue. And it was absolutely terrifying. And I had a higher cost of living, but it was incredibly intellectually stimulating. And so I kind of had this dilemma where I had to balance my curiosity to work in startups with my risk tolerance for sleeping. The great learning there was basically sales readiness is, in an ideal world, I think about $1 million in revenue is when you should start to hire your first salesperson. Because if you're not doing that, it typically means you're creating this mucus membrane between talking to the customer and building what that customer needs to be built. So after that, I worked, I like to say that I've been in quarantine since 2016. But I've been working remotely since then. I was the first sales hire at Delighted, and I ran all of sales from $1 million to acquisition by Qualtrics over the next couple of years. And I would often start a sales cycle in 3 different cities and close it. No one would. Members would often find out where I was from my stock time zone. So the big insight there that I learned is that as the world transitions to remote sales, what's going to matter a lot more is not building an arbitrary relationship and then revealing technology to that relationship, but actually the relationship being a side effect of delightful transactions. So customers they're facing a lot more software, and so they're much more likely to have done a lot of research. They're very savvy buyers, and they typically have questions that they want answered directly, as opposed to like leading with a meeting. So I think that these days, basically the attitude towards sales is going to be a lot different. So let's now talk about the employer problem. So right now, basically the cost of replacing a salesperson is basically an illiquid marketplace. So it's low uncertain. Imagine buying a car for $115,000, and then it takes 6 months to do that. And then it crashes 36% of the time. This is basically accepted because it's still very valuable for sales to work 64% of the time. But that means that there's a lot of room to improve this. And the easiest way that I think that we can tackle this, in particular, the 6.2 months, is by preparing a pre-screening pool ahead of time by going after passive candidates versus active job seekers, basically not thinking about it last minute. And then also for turnover, I think that if we get the right experts with the right sales judgment in the room, they can filter a lot of hiring, basically people that are not ready for sales yet. So it's also important to think about the problem from the candidate perspective. When I moved to New York, I wanted to apply to every software company in New York with one application. But I couldn't do that. I had a job and I had limited free time, and I think that it's feasible to probably pursue 5 to 10 opportunities on top of your own job, but there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to entertain 50, and I want to make that possible. So the way that Zen Qualify works is it's a simple common application that asks you to explain a product and demonstrate it. And this is what you would likely do on the job, and it's something that you're likely doing already on the job. There's a panel of experts that will compare and contrast, basically side-by-side responses, and then if you pass or you're in the top 51% of applicants, you become a member of Zen Qualify. So it becomes a credential and score. Every quarter wins recognition and a self-care grant is what I'm calling it. But we're going to expand the benefits for the membership and also the product owners themselves. So I've actually recruited a software panel of judges over the last few months, and one of them is an SVP of sales at a software company called Dude Solutions, which makes education software for schools. And basically, his point is that it's hard to arrive at whether or not someone is good at sales. And the reason for that is really contextual. And what matters is, can you convince, does the majority of the room think that person is good at sales? And so what I'm thinking is that if we get a panel of experts, they can inform, basically, we can make an algorithm that crowdsources that taste. So this is an example of interface and what it's like to compare and contrast for the judges. And so this is an example of a mini pitch where you're just giving a little bit about the product and then writing about it. But this basically informs a leaderboard, which is scoring their rank. So I wanted to emphasize that this is the very first Zen Qualify. It's open. I think that it's going to be an awesome credential to have on your resume to open up, to distinguish yourself as a salesperson. So if there's anyone that you know that you think would be a good fit, I would really appreciate it if you told them about it. And to wrap things up, basically, if you're excited about helping salespeople, if you do sales for fun, I am the guy to talk to, and I'd love to hear from you. There are some specific asks in general. So if you are open to helping review resumes or do mock interviews for salespeople, I kind of want these to be benefits for the community. Also, if you have any ideas around driving awareness or you have ideas for improving the incentives for prize winners, I would love to talk to you even further. And from here, I think that's all I have today. But from here, I'd like to open up the floor to Q&A. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Just a quick reminder, Alex is going to field the first question. And we also need to pass on from 36 if everybody could keep their masks on. We really appreciate it. So the way this is going to work, since we have people on YouTube, ask the question. I know it's going to repeat the question so that people on YouTube can hear it, and then we'll answer you. Alex?
So I had a really rough time hiring my first 3 salespeople because I didn't know enough about the sales process to truly appreciate a good salesperson would be for my role. So you have salespeople that they sell a transactional more complex, or relational, or even virtual. Now it's a whole new one. So how does a person, a employer on your platform, not just look at the pitch and presume that was a really charismatic pitch? They're going to be a great salesperson. How do you actually with their particular role?
Yeah, absolutely, great question. So the question, just to, I should repeat it back, right? Okay, so basically, how can we figure out whether or not they're a good fit for the product that they're hiring for, outside of just their pitch, but also in their background potentially. So outside of the, I would say the pitch, we have a background section where we ask a little bit about the products that you've sold, the average deal size, for example. And we also, this is something that we're going to get better at, but there's basically salesperson company fit or stage fit. And imagine kind of a line where on one half you have startup salesperson, on the other half you have enterprise software salesperson. So the delineation I think there that you have to make is, typically the startup person is a lot more entrepreneurial. It's likely that they've hacked things together while they're at a corporate job. They've built, decks, presentations, things that are outside of the box to do. They're crazy enough to go work in startup sales. The other side of things, it can be very entrepreneurial as well on the big company side of things, but we're going to have to basically figure out how to do that over time. And we're going to get better at that. Yes.
Is there a way that you found to filter for perseverance and the ability to stick out rejection from salespeople?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of a default. So for example, I think that every person gets that trait. So I'm really focusing on more how to have the competency to close, one deal. And I think that that's going to be demonstrated in the background. I think that there is an opportunity to ask, I think one example is like with Y Combinator with their application, they'll ask, is there a time that you have hacked the system? And so they'll kind of ask about a particular kind of crazy example in your background. So that I think we'll have some sort of equivalent where we'll figure out, maybe you grew up in war-torn Ukraine or something like that, and now you're crushing it in Tulsa. So I'd love to hear, more stories like that. Yes.
Okay, so in the beginning, when you presented, it's like the Olympics, it's like the Oscars, it's like American Idol for pitching. And then I hear that it's really more of a monster for sales with video, right? So that's maybe more to it than that. But so I think clarity-wise would be really good is if you could say, we've got a panel of people and we're ranking our product. So the people that get on our product, not everybody can get on Monster. Not everybody can get on ours. And they're ranked and they're reviewed. And so that's the element where you're kind of combining that. That message wasn't really coming through. In the end, it was like, it's just a monster with some video. And that's not a great differentiator for you. I think the point was, you need to make sure that you get that message across, that we're vetting them, we're curating them on making sure. So
we're essentially gamifying recruiting. So what we're doing is turning recruiting into a contest.
So make sure that message comes through, because at the end, it was just recruiting software with video.
Absolutely, great advice.
To piggyback on that, Top Towel, are you familiar with Top Towel?
Yes.
So this is much more similar to Top Towel.
Yes.
Okay, that's very good. You want to telling everybody else like this?
Yeah, absolutely. So Top Towel is basically an engineering kind of recruiting, I would say like a modern engineering recruiter. And actually, to my experience with design and engineering actually sparked this as well. There's a lot of these places online like GitHub and Dribble that'll make it really easy to basically put up a little bit of work and then get validation. And basically, what you're doing is basically scoring your ability. But this is really difficult to do in sales. LinkedIn is more of like an advertising platform. It's really difficult to go get peer review. And so I realized that there's not really a place to put that stuff, and that stuff is really basically really gives away whether or not you're going to be exceptional. And so yeah, I'd love to at some point be known as like the Top Towel for sales or something like that. And were interesting to me. Like there isn't really a bounty for sales. Yes.
Got a question for you as a business owner. How do you, how does your time break down in running your business? What do you find most of your time doing?
Yeah, great question. It's kind of like hunting and gathering what is relevant that week, and that's what's really exciting about founding in general. So for example, I might have a VC pitch like 2 weeks from now, and I'll need to basically like code for 2 days straight. And then, it's heavily dependent on the thing that is on the near term target, and then kind of what's off in the distance as well. So I'm typically not kind of like scheduling like 2 hours of engineering time, 2 hours of selling time, 2 hours of, I'm not getting it. I'm thinking of like, what's ahead of me? What do I need to do for that day? So it's completely unpredictable, in short. Yes, Benzie.
How do you make it schedulable if people are reviewing it randomly, right? Let's say, okay, it takes off and 1,000 applicants a week, and these are senior people, how does that review every video or resume?
Right, so in the,
Can you repeat the question?
yeah, absolutely. Sorry about that. The question was, how do you basically scale the human screening aspect of it over time? These are valuable people, SVPs of sales, CEOs, et cetera, on the panel. So that's a great question. So in the initial, kind of the founding panel is, I'm going to give them a little bit of equity, and also these are people that are from my network that are just likely to help anyway. And what this is doing is basically training a model for predicting sales accuracy, sales competency and accuracy for the future. So it's going to be less human reliant over time. Yes.
So that feeds into the reason that the secret sauce initially is that these are really valuable people and they're reviewing it. It's like the Oscars, right? In the Oscars, there's thousands of films that are reviewed each year, but how they've solved that problem is they've recruited thousands of producers to review, right? So you might want to think about, instead of making it a machine learning thing, because that's going to flatten it and it's not going to do very well over time. You might think it is, but the reality is machines don't really necessarily. That's why sales has never been automated.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I think I'm actually emphasizing that with, I'm not going to the market with ML being the differentiator. I'm just explaining that that's how what's likely to happen is a human will oversee. So you might have a smaller body that's a panel, and that panel will change over time, but that panel will be a lot more efficient than it used to be. Similar to like a self-checkout typically has a guy watching 4 machines. And instead, you might not have a panel of like 1,000 people, you'll have a panel of like, 20, 30, 100.
But that's a monetization strategy you're missing too. Because if you can get it to be like the Oscars, again, I'm going back to that, because it's the uniqueness of what you're talking about. And if you can get that to where I want to be on this platform, I want to be a reviewer for this platform, because that means that I am considered elite in my field, and therefore. So you can actually get them to have to pay effectively in some way to be a part of that, or incentivize them somehow to be a part of that. And then you can always have that elite crew that's reviewing, and you can scale it over time.
Yeah, another incentive as a judge, I'm definitely thinking about like judge incentives, is that you'll have first position to hire yourself, and you'll also be able to use the marketplace yourself. So while I was actually recruiting the judges, one of the judges started interviewing the other. One was a CEO looking for a software sales job. The other one was someone from my past that that was in the market. And so I think that that's going to be an incentive in itself. And then we're going to figure out, we definitely have to figure out that pull over time for the next batch. Yes.
So my biggest thing that I think you're going to come into is you're clearly building a marketplace technology, right? So you need employers to be valuable to salespeople, you need salespeople to be valuable to employers. It's a network effect. That's really, really difficult unless you raise a boatload of money and you make a really big impact into what yours is already a very crowded space. So how are you going to tackle the critical mass of employers or job seekers, and how can you establish authority early on for people to want to do this in the first place?
Yeah, I think that's where my background plays into part a little bit. I'm going to focus first on the network that knows me really well. And so a lot of the large sales team at Citrix that I work with, a lot of those people are VPs of sales. They're sales leaders that already know what I'm doing. And so I'm going to initially start with that network. And so from there, I think that will basically turn into other conversations at other organizations. And I think that's also, I'm focusing my efforts on kind of like extremely lean outbound sales in the beginning. So I'm going to just kind of, ask for basically sales sponsorships and reach out to employers directly. Instead of, I don't really have, I do intend to raise a seed round, but I think that I can get to revenue first. I'm also, over the last 10 years, I've also reduced my cost of living to like 15 grand a year. So it helps when you don't have to pay an engineer or salesperson in the beginning. So I'm basically able to I think I can get to profitability really, really quickly. And then from there, it will be really, really easy to raise money.
So thank you so much. I think we're going to end up wrapping it up. I did want to ask you personally one final question before our question, which is what came on
I promise to repeat it.
I just wanted to take a minute or two and tell us a little bit, since this is Global Entrepreneurship Week, tell us a little bit about how you were able to become a digital nomad, start, found, fund, et cetera, this business and, succeed on a global scale.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that, so the question was basically, how did you get into working remotely and then kind of nomadically, like traveling and keep up with that in kind of a successful software sales role? I think it's very organizational design. So in 2016, I started at a company called Delighted, and it was based in Palo Alto, 6 people at the time. They were, I think they had one guy in the Midwest, and I became their remote sales hire. I had just gone through a breakup at that point, and I was like, I'm gonna go to Berlin. So I bought a flight to Berlin, and basically I felt like I was in trouble almost. Like I felt like I had to tell them that I did it. But then we kind of unlearned that behavior. Like basically I went to Berlin and started just doing my job. And then it turns out that they just cared about me doing my job, and they didn't really care where I was. And so there were a lot of these conversations with the CEO where I almost felt like I was getting away with something, but it turns out that it was not that big of a deal at all. Like they were just like, the culture was very much like, I don't care if you have to go to the doctor, just go to the doctor and then, do your job and then report on your job. And so it's very much who you're working with outside of, it's about setting that precedent. And so that's another thing. I think that's going to be a strong selling point for the future of salespeople as well. A lot of salespeople will want that level of autonomy. Sales in particular can be very autonomous, but I think that those roles will be really exciting, and I'm going to try to curate the remote opportunities as well.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions about the asks that Emil has given to our community? I know I'd be happy to help with mock interviews. And please keep these in mind. He'll be up here afterwards. If you could, if you have anything you can help him with even, not on his, what the community can do for him, please come up afterwards, talk to him, Alex, you guys connect. And thank you very much. You did a great job.
Thank you.
All right, next presenter is going to come up, Lee, and he's going to switch out his tech. But in the meantime, I know Abby Marino is our former lead organizer. She's on YouTube, so I want to shout out to Abby. Again, she is rolling off as our lead organizer, and I want to introduce our new lead organizer. I didn't want to throw him into the fire, so I did the kickoff this morning, but he's going to take over from here. You guys will see his awesome charismatic face as our new MC, and lead organizer's name is Aaron. He recently moved here from Pittsburgh on Father's Day. and started and operated the incubator at Penn State. Currently working for Tinto Capital as a program director. And if you want to see him, I'll let him tell more about himself while the guys are switching out the tech. But we're super excited to have him as a part of our community and excited to have his leadership in our city. So welcome, Aaron.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. All right. Yeah. She told all my little secrets. How about that? It's been a great being in the Tulsa ecosystem for the last few months. That is going on here. As Kathy said, initiatives at Penn State and ended up starting an incubator called do some wonderful things in that area. And now that we are now here in Tulsa, I'm leading an initiative called the Tulsa Emerging 100 with a group out of the Bay Area called Sky's the Limit. I'm working with Tinto Capital. I know I'm saying a whole lot. Don't worry about it. We'll talk about it later. But Tulsa Emerging 100, where we are looking to help 100 entrepreneurs start a business in the next year. And so we have a great team behind this effort. We have some local investors, we have some national investors who are interested, and this is really taking off the ground. So we're excited about the work that is coming up. I think that we have a little break in here. Is that correct, Kathy? A little break, or are we just going to go right back to the lead? Oh, you're ready. He's a pretty good. All right. And so we'll talk more about that later, but I want to welcome you all to 1 Million Cups. This is my first time leading this group, but I'll be doing it for the next year. And so we're excited about all the things that are to come. With that said, I want to turn it over and introduce my good friend that I just met, Easton, who's at Aerovision and leading Aerovision, his dream, his vision, his passion. And I'll kick it to you and let you see what you do.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. As he said, my name is Lee Easton, and I'm very honored to be here today. So thank you guys for having me, and also it being Global Entrepreneurship Week. A lot has changed since I originally made this presentation, March 18th, and November today. So I'm very excited we could be here today. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background about myself. I built a business around a lifestyle, and it's been an ongoing effort. But I want to tell you a little bit about my story, why I built the business the way that I built it. I think it applies pretty well considering this is Global Entrepreneurship Week. Then I'll tell you about my company. So who is Aerovision? What do we actually do? And since this is also a 1 Million Cups presentation, I want to share how coffee equals success for my company. And I'm going to show you that visually. And then we'll talk a little bit about our clients, our competition, and then I'm going to make an ask to you guys. So to kick things off, I want to share a quick video. Okay. Show of hands, does anyone know maybe the significance of why I would put that video into this presentation?
Leap of faith.
Leap of faith, good. Any other takers? Okay. So one, it's scary, right? I could see leap of faith. That rock right there, 5 minutes before I took this video, I took a conference call and landed one of the biggest contracts that my company has today. And so I wanted to share how powerful remote working has become. This photo right here is myself and my beautiful fiance, Jordan. Raise your hand. There we go. She's blushing underneath that mask. And right here we are identifying my next conference call spot. So here is the Earth, and here are all the places that I've had the opportunity to work from. Lifestyle business, and the goal of that business is to work remotely for me, create some financial freedom, and have the opportunity to kind of explore and travel the world. That may not be everyone's mission, but it was mine, and a lot of it stemmed from a book that I read called The 4-Hour Workweek. Yes, I see some head nods. Good, good. So let's back up. This did not happen overnight. This did not happen this year. This was a long 6-year process. So 2014, I graduated college, went to Oklahoma State University, got a stellar job at a school with ConocoPhillips, big oil and gas company. I was working in the field as a wireless engineer, truly working remotely. We were bringing cell service to the areas of the oil, so I had no coverage, so that was very remote. Oil plummets within the first year that I started, and they cut all expenses for the field. So they pulled me into the office, and I quickly found out that the 9-to-5 desk job was just not my cup of tea. I had a friend at the time who was also an entrepreneur who recommended reading The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. He said, hey man, this might be a ticket. You could escape the 9-to-5. I know you like to travel. So I read the book, and in Tim's book, he has an acronym called DEAL, and it's define, eliminate, automate, and liberate. So the goal is define what your lifestyle is, what you want to do with your business, with your life, and then focus on eliminating things in your life to get you to that goal. And for me, that was selling a nice house, a car, sold all my furniture, reduced, downsized, all the while I'm still at ConocoPhillips. And the next step was then to start automating. So he calls it Muse, but basically create a business that you know you can run from anywhere in the world, and then you can start implementing processes so that you can run that business automated. And for me, that was Aerovision. And I stayed employed at ConocoPhillips for the next few years, religiously reading this book, growing my business on the side, kind of working on it at nights and weekends, things like that. I was working well over 4 hours a week at this point, and I knew I needed to make an exit. So around 2018, I finally decided to start practicing what I was preaching, and took a lot of the steps that I got from the book, friends and family, decided to rebrand Aerovision, focus just on doing website development. We were somewhat of a digital marketing company at the time, doing photo, video, and web. I knew that with web, there were a lot more ways that I could automate that, work remote, travel. So I decided to pull the plug on ConocoPhillips early 2019. And I took a big trip right after I left. I went down to Costa Rica and spent some time in various areas. I think I was gone about 2 months. And the reason that he promotes traveling in the book so much is to delegate. And so as entrepreneurs, I think we can all agree that we want to take on a lot of responsibility ourselves. And so that was big for me just right off the gate, and going somewhere and trying to build business and grow my contracts and my clients from a different country. And so flash forward to today, considering the roller coaster of the year we've had, I've been very fortunate to continue to grow this business. And after spending some time around the world and traveling and meeting a beautiful girl, I decided that, Tulsa's my place. I want to be here. I want to grow something that's here. We've also tapped into a market within the banking industry, just with the nature of the work that we do now. And I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to grow just the lifestyle business. So who's Aerovision? So currently we're a team of full stack developers and data analysts. This past year we've shifted a lot. We pivoted, I would say, from doing just web dev to building software and working a lot in the data space. So when I say data, that's everything from engineering data, moving data around for clients, lifting it up into a visual layer. We found that after working with a few community banks, there's some market opportunity within this certain size bank and some of the legacy products that we're using. So here's a photo of me and my team that started the company, two of my best friends. We love to travel together, and that was kind of the purpose of the business at the time. So data visualization can be used to show you guys how I spend my day. So here is a data visualization tool called Tableau, and Tableau will let you hook right into your Google Calendar. And my trusty data team has helped me build this. And really, what I want to point out here is this bar chart below. This shows all my meetings over the last 4 years. And we've kind of categorized them as to what type of meeting they might be. You can lay my revenue chart, my revenue model of my business directly on top of that, and it would almost line up perfectly. So for me, having coffees and meetings and talking and networking with other people is directly correlated to growth in our business. Down in the bottom right, you can kind of see some of the favorite places that I like to have my coffees and meet people. That's just a quick glance. So who chooses us? This last year has been a really big year for us. We reached over $1 million in revenue and have got to work with some amazing clients, most of which are Oklahoma-based, quite a few just here in Tulsa, and that again goes back to the amount of coffee that I've had, right at about 1 million cups. Some of our competition identified locally and nationally. We've got a few locally that do quite a bit with data, and what I've found is it's really nice to see who else is working in this data space, especially in our community in Tulsa. You could call it competition. For me, it's just been great because typically there's something that we can do for each other. The data space is so large, and we've got companies here that just focus on integrating data or just focus on cleaning data, some just focus on lifting it to a visual layer. So there's some piece, some aspect there where we can collaborate with clients. At a national level, I've identified a few potential competitors. Heatlinks is a very large oil and gas focused data company. Accenture taps into more of that data consulting. And then Interworks was actually based out of Oklahoma, but they did grow nationally. And they really focus on implementing Tableau. So they're just a Tableau partner and specifically help clients on board data visualization tools. So to wrap things up today, what's my ask? I've shared with you about my lifestyle business. I grew it. I started as a service model. We're now getting into this concept of spinning out some products within the banking industry. So my goal for my business over the next year and a half is to shift from a service-based business and productize something specifically for the banking market. And I'm looking to have more coffee with like-minded individuals that can maybe share their experience or opportunity with me. That's how I learn, and I find that others learn that way as well. So my ask is, if you're not in the room, or if you're not online, and if you have maybe somebody in your network that has converted a service business into a product company, I would love to meet them. So from there, I'll open it up for Q&A. Yep.
So as a data company, how do you use your own data at your fingertips to optimize parts of your own business?
Good question. So he asked, as a data company, how do we use our own data to optimize our business? So we love using data visualization tools. I would say like the quickest, easiest thing for us to do is throw our project data into a visualization tool. So use Jira for a lot of projects, for example. Jira can hook right into Tableau and Power BI. For really more for me than for the rest of the team, it just helps me get a quick snapshot. I don't know if you play with Jira, but you can get into the weeds pretty easily. And I like to stay up and just kind of look where we're at on project phases. I know Jira has some great reporting abilities as well, but having maybe a span of all projects, whether we're tracking in Asana, tracking in Jira, and tracking another tool, that can all be lifted into a visual layer. Any other questions?
I mean, you have to speak like a technical one. So I have another one. As far as early companies and early teams, do you have advice for organizations setting the groundwork for future data reporting and business kind of aided reporting? As like metadata, what can we do now to make it helpful in the future?
Also a very good question. He's asking how can an early startup or possibly a new business prep for the use of data over time, which this is, I think, something that all companies should maybe consider, especially if you're in tech or if you're in financial services, really company. But my recommendation would be just start warehousing that data as soon as possible. And warehousing data is not necessarily cheap, but it will be much cheaper to start it early on rather than hiring a firm down the road to come and warehouse all your data for you. And you can even just start pushing data to the cloud, maybe Microsoft Stack with Azure. The nice thing about getting the Microsoft Stack with Azure is you can get Power BI licenses for like $10 a user. that. So my recommendation is if you know you're gonna need it at some point, go ahead and start centralizing and warehousing it early on. And that will let you lift it up, yes.
We have a question from Abby on the chat. What are your top tips for delegation?
Okay, Abby asked, what are my top tips for delegation? So for me, one was travel. And I'm the type of person that if I'm available and I have the time, I'll take on responsibility and do it myself. And so traveling for me is a big way to do that, because a lot of times I like to go to places that are fairly remote and maybe there's not good cellular coverage or there's not good Wi-Fi. So that right there forces you to build processes. And you can try to run a process with just about anything you do in your business when it comes to email or scheduling or planning with clients. But then, forcing delegation on other parts, or maybe it requires there's a $500 purchase that you need for marketing material. You've got a virtual assistant. You just give her a cap and say, anything $1,000 or less, don't even ask. Just do it, and I'll work with you later. Those type of things remove you from being a bottleneck in your business.
Lee, I'm going to ask a question more around Lee the man, okay? So, being in data is not probably, wasn't your dream job. I'm assuming you didn't grow up saying, I want to be in data. How do you maintain the passion to do this and to be in something that maybe it wasn't necessarily your driving force in life at one point, but now it's your means of living and your lifestyle? How do you keep the fire burning?
It's a good question. So he asked, how do I maintain a passion for something as technical as data when I may not have been the dream from day one? So my passion for this has grown over time, and my business was taking a shotgun approach early on. We were doing photography, videography, website development, and working with clients of such a variety enabled me to learn more and more about their businesses. And as we started working with companies on the technical side of things, I started seeing opportunities for using their data. And so really it was just kind of a passion that grew over the last 6 years. So today I am very, very passionate about it. That's why I've really decided to almost shift focus from this lifestyle business approach and pursue something that could potentially have an impact on a small community of banks within a niche market. And I love seeing what data can do. I'm a very analytical person, an engineering degree background, so if I can run some numbers and look at how many coffees I've had and how that attributes to my success, I'm going to do it. So, yes.
So I'm a little bit biased because I know you and your background. So talk a little bit about how, I've definitely seen some of the, ebbs and flows of your business over the years. So, and you spoke a little bit of it, but how are you transitioning, or what is the kind of the plan to transition? You're going away from kind of this, a bit of a shotgun approach. Now you've gotten into kind of support, you were support and maintenance and that, but also data. And now it looks like you're focusing more on data. What is, what were some of the key decision points that made you choose that path? So because both were very successful for you, so I'm just curious how, as an entrepreneur, how you saw those differences in your business.
Yeah, Tammy has a great question. So over the years with the ebbs and flows of business and pursuing a lot of different market opportunities, why have I chosen data? What has kind of guided me in that direction? So my understanding is that data is a big term today. A lot of people talk about it, and not a lot of people really know how you can use it. And it's becoming better and better. When I was at ConocoPhillips, I got pulled into the office and I was put on their data integration team. So once I left ConocoPhillips, started my own role and grew passionate about data, I started realizing the market opportunity was much larger and larger and larger. So there are There are a lot of great successful businesses that build websites, a lot of great successful businesses that are doing full stack development. To me, that's kind of the next technical step. Go from a front end marketing site into maybe front end, back end, maybe you're moving some data around on the back end for a client. And then even further than that, I like getting even more technical into how we can help businesses. And a lot of that for us, or what I've discovered, lives within how that organization is utilizing their data. And for me, after having worked with a few community banks now, I'm really starting to see market potential there. And I guess my plan for the next year now is stick with this consulting type service model. We're helping banks really make use of their data, but a lot of it's just learning. We're like a sponge. We're gaining a lot of knowledge. And now that we've gone from a couple banks to a few more banks just in discussion, we're at that stage of maybe even applying knowledge. So we'll learn what's valuable. We learn maybe how to organize something, how to make it useful. Now we can just take that conversation and offer it up to other banks, other organizations. But the next step would be to strategically build something that makes any bank able to use their data. And again, these are smaller banks. We specifically have targeted banks within the 500 million to like 1.3, 1.4 billion size on their assets. So that's the next year is, learn more, keep learning. And once we've identified some internal tools that we can build to make us work more useful, then that would be something we could then possibly take to market and sell.
We have another question in the chat from Talisha. She asks, can you talk about your passion for data and the possible impact it can have on the community? What would you say is the overall mission of Aerovision?
Yes, good question. So talk about data and impact that it has. What's the overall mission? So when I say community, I do mean this banking community that we've tapped into. There are a lot of legacy products that the community-sized banks still use. And there's a lot of challenges with some of these legacy products. They're not moving away from them anytime soon, but a lot of the smaller banks want to start operating like the larger banks and making use of their data, using cloud platforms to warehouse. Our mission is to help aid that. Our mission really would be to create something that is easy enough to use that those banks can then operate like they operate.
Where do you see the future of individual application of data going? In what ways can the individual person benefit from collecting and measuring their own personal data, like you did with your coffee?
So how do I see growth for individual application data, like I did with my coffee chart? That, and I feel like that could be so many different ways. So me as a business owner, I use readily available data on my iPhone called screen time. That's, I'd say, one very valuable piece right there, that if you've only got a certain number of hours in a day and you need to be productive, measuring how you interact with your devices and what you're spending your time on. That way, you're competing against yourself really, and making sure that if you've got a goal or a mission, that you're spending the time that is necessary to get you there. Within organizations, probably very similarly, we were doing this at ConocoPhillips too. Individuals were looking at how much time they were allocating to certain projects. Now, granted, everyone's salary, but that will tell you really, if this is a large effort, large project, I probably need to be spending most of my time there, whereas I shouldn't maybe be spending as much time in the HR system looking at my vacation hours and things like that.
Ricky wants to know, aside from the 4-hour work week, if you could recommend another book for entrepreneurs, what would that be?
Yeah, thanks, Ricky. Any other books besides 4-hour work week? So I would recommend really any of the Seth Godin books. His are all great. Currently reading Lynchpin, and there's one called Poke the Box that a mentor gave me a long time ago. I'm reading one right now as well called The One Person, $1 Million Business, and it's a Wall Street Journal journalist, and they just collected a bunch of stories from people that have built lifestyle businesses up to $1 to $2 million in revenue. So there's a lot of stories in there of similar Tim Ferriss type people that wanted to pursue lifestyle traveling or just working less. And each person, I think, is identified in a chapter, but it breaks down some of the processes, how they delegate and things like that. That book's been very good so far. And then lastly, it's fiction, but I would recommend The Alchemist. I read that every year. It's a great book. I made Jordan read it. She liked it. But it's really more about finding purpose and pursuing the journey. And so I think for an entrepreneur, I highly recommend that book. Yes.
I have a question for you. Really just, I kind of being on the inside, I know you work with Jamie, your virtual assistant, and so being around entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs team. As you scaled your business, just the impact that using a virtual assistant had to help you out, as you mentioned, as entrepreneurs, I think it is hard to delegate, and when you're starting a new company, you're trying to scale your company, it can become overwhelming, trying to do all those tasks. And in the 4-hour work week, I really suggested looking into virtual assistant. So what benefit can they provide for your company? What benefit can they provide you personally as a founder of a company? And how has that helped you to grow your business?
That's a great question.
Very good question. So specifically around finding a virtual assistant and how they can help you maybe in your life and business. So yes, that is a big part of the 4-hour work week. There's a chapter in there where it basically challenges you to go delegate something. And at the time, I think he wrote the book. It was called olance.com. Upwork bought them. So Upwork was the relevant term whenever I was looking. And I found Jamie, who hopefully she's watching this right now. And she's been working for me for a little over 6 years, I think. And it's crazy to think that, a lot of entrepreneurs will try to take on so many things. But what I've really enjoyed about finding somebody who's, virtual assistant or not, whether they're here or not, finding somebody that you really work well with and that maybe shares some of the same passions as you, and then investing in them. And so Jamie, for example, when we first started, I think I was having her help me research flights, and we were looking for good deals and the best Airbnbs and doing just some hacking away, like how to travel to a certain spot for a certain amount of time on a certain budget. And she was really good at that. She's doing research. And from then till now, she handles all of our invoicing to clients. So she's working in QuickBooks almost every day. So she handles all the invoicing from contractors. So she runs a spreadsheet. All our contractors submit invoices to her. She trues that up almost daily. She's letting me know if I'm about to be late on a payment or something to do. She spends a lot of time reviewing the contractor's hours and making sure that the hours are true to whatever project they're on. So back to some of the company use data, right? Jamie's helping a lot with that and making sure that some of the tools we're using are the right tools and that we can still track our projects. So we found an app called Harvest, which is a great time tracking tool to allocate time on projects. Again, credit goes to her completely for that. So, finding a virtual assistant and growing with them would be my top recommendation for anybody. A lot of people will have maybe 5, 10, virtual assistants that are delegating specific tasks to. I'd say if you can really invest in 1 or 2 and grow them, and offer them more and more responsibility, that for me has been the best benefit, is just having someone I can trust and rely on like her.
Is that all the questions? Any other questions? All right, last question for you, Lee.
Okay.
What can 1 million cups do for you?
So 1 million cups, again, my ask is really specifically around pointing me in the right direction, some guidance. So I'm looking to network or talk to people that have converted a service-based business into a productized company. And I see it a lot with consulting firms. Some consulting firms are working in a very wide space. They'll get with a client, they'll find that this same client has the same problem as that client, and they'll usually build a tool and they'll try to take that to market and sell it. I think that's happening to me right now. And so really talking to somebody that's had that experience, that's what I'm looking for.
Great, thank you for your time. Let's give it a hand. I just want to thank our team. If you are 1 Million Cups organizer, if you can raise your hand. We have Mitch, we have Ethan, we have Kathy in the back. Anybody else here on the team? No? Okay, all right. So thank you for your time. This was a wonderful day with Lee and Anul, and also Alex for coming in as our champion here. So thank you all for your time. See you next month. Have a good one. Thanks.